I think, appropriately aggressive, not unreasonable, but where people are violating the law, it's our job to make sure that they're held accountable.
You've received 120.
Continue to watch this hearing live on cspan.org. The House is gaveling in next. One bill this afternoon that would ban federal funding of abortions. They meet later this afternoon in a joint session, later today, in a joint session with the Senate for the State of the Union. Our coverage at 8 p.m. Eastern here on C-SPAN.
Loving God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. The People's House prepares to welcome the President of the United States this day, as well as the other governmental, judicial, and military leadership of our nation. The world watches as America's great experiment in civilian self-government is in high relief. May all who populate these hallways this day be possessed of goodwill and a shared commitment to guarantee the freedoms and responsibilities inspired by the soaring rhetoric and subsequent actions of our American ancestors. May all that is said and done in this chamber today redound to the benefit of our nation and the glory of your holy name. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, I demand a vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal.
Questions on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The journal stands approved.
Mr. Speaker,
the gentleman from North Carolina.
Mr. Speaker, I demand the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. Pledge of allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from New York, Mr. Higgins. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Chair will entertain up to 15 requests for one-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. This is the gentleman from Texas rise.
Ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, the State of the Union is tonight, but the President has already said that he would ignore Congress if he doesn't have his way. He's going to rule by pen and phone. The pen to write down laws and executive orders bypassing Congress. The phone to call lower-level operatives, I suppose, like the EPA, the IRS, NSA, and impose new rules and thus again bypassing Congress. Mr. Speaker, nowhere in the Constitution is the phrase executive order. It's not in this Constitution. This is not an imperial kingdom where the ruler makes his own rules as he goes along. We all learned in ninth grade civics that Congress makes the law and the President can approve it or disapprove it. It's in the Constitution. Rather than rule by pen and phone, the President should be bound by the law and rule by the Constitution and by his oath. But the Constitution seems to be a mere suggestion to this administration. Madam Speaker, this is America. It's not Burger King. The President cannot always have it his way. And that's just the way it is. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
H.R. 7, the so-called No Taxpayer Funding of Abortion Act, is as deceitful as it is dangerous. We already ensure that tax dollars don't fund abortions and have ever since the Hyde Amendment was introduced in 1976. This new effort is an attempt to create restrictions far beyond the scope of current law, interfering with how women use their own private dollars on their own private insurance for health coverage. This is just the latest Republican assault in their ongoing war on women, and it is why I felt it was so important to introduce the Women's Health Protection Act. My bill would put a stop to the unprecedented attack on abortion we've seen at the state level over the last few years. It would ensure that every woman has access to the medical care she's entitled to. Decisions about pregnancies are deeply personal and difficult, and they belong to the woman and the doctor she trusts, period.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I'd like to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, when the President delivers his State of the Union address tonight, it will be important to note what he won't say about the state of our nation's foreign policy. This is because, on President Obama's watch, America has been notably absent from the world stage. His foreign policy has taken America away from a role of global leadership to a shuffled retreat. Madam Speaker, successful foreign policy is defined by your friends trusting you and your enemies fearing you. Chances are the President will only touch momentarily on the Iranian nuclear deal tonight, and for good reason. It has gathered strong bipartisan opposition, and the regime in Tehran has flaunted the deal as a legitimization of their shadowy nuclear program. Madam Speaker, those who seek freedom and democracy look now more than ever to America for leadership. But chances are you won't hear much about that from the President tonight. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today the New York Power Authority took an important step toward righting a historic wrong by removing and providing funding to remove the Robert Moses Parkway in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is a national treasure, drawing millions of visitors each year. However, the construction of the Robert Moses Parkway in the 1960s, the New York Power Authority created both economic and physical barriers to Niagara Falls and arguably the greatest waterfront in the world. For Niagara Falls, it's not about tearing something down, it's about building something up. Removal of the parkway is a critical step in giving the city the waterfront it deserves and unleashing the limitless economic potential that comes with it. The New York Power Authority did the right thing, and the future of Niagara Falls will be better because of it. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revising and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, this evening I'm glad to hear the President will deliver a State of the Union address focused on optimism. Optimism requires he changes disastrous policies destroying jobs, as revealed by the record number of food stamp recipients. Each higher food stamp report uncovers job destruction. Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin has proven jobs are created by citizens keeping their own money. It's not the government's money first. Dangerous deficits are unsustainable. The President needs to repeal and replace the Obamacare train wreck, which destroys jobs. He should uncover the tragedy of the Benghazi murders and promote peace through strength to prevent further attacks. Reducing the military threatens American families with expanded terrorist safe havens. The IRS targeting of citizens should really be investigated. The NSA should be restricted, not spy on all Americans. The Department of Justice FBI eavesdropping on media should be stopped with reprimands for malfeasance. The President can restore optimism if he and his advisors change course. Americans have seen the overreach of big government. Now we should work together for limited government and expanded freedom. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Texas seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Madam Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. The President is going to address this country and this House with great enthusiasm for the work that he has done with his cabinet and members of Congress, the Democratic members and others who have worked with him to make America better. He'll be able to report that 3 million Americans have enrolled in the Affordable Care Act, giving suffering Americans with pre-existing conditions the opportunity for good health care. He'll be able to acknowledge that this family, this Mrs. Aguilar, would be better off if states like Texas would have expanded the Medicare coverage. For her children are covered, but she is not. And we're committed to working to make sure that that happens. He'll be able to say that he stands on the side of extending the unemployment for working Americans, those who have worked and now are unemployed. And yes, he will be able to say that it is important that we invest in the infrastructure. And I want to be able to say that food stamps are now given mostly to working Americans, and that it is important to note that America is great. As we watch our soldiers in foreign lands wearing the soldier's uniform with pride, will we invest in the American people? Food stamps is an investment. The President can be optimistic to work for all of America. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Last week, amid frigid temperatures, hundreds of thousands of Americans marched on our nation's capital in support of the unborn and values of life. Today, it's our turn. Our turn to stand for life by supporting H.R. 7, the No Taxpayer Funds for Abortion Act. This bill would ban the use of taxpayer dollars to fund abortions once and for all. The last thing pro-life taxpayers should be required to do is subsidize unethical practices. It's their money, and you better believe I'll fight for them to have a say in how it's spent. Enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, or Ms. Speaker, today, this isn't just what Republicans want. According to multiple polls, the majority of Americans oppose the use of federal funding for abortions. This is what the American people want. It's time for folks in Washington to listen, to remember we work for them. Let's stand for life. It's the right and just thing to do. Yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, today Ukraine faces a pivotal moment in its history. The Ukrainian people are making their demand for freedom and economic growth loud and clear, protesting President Yanukovych's refusal to sign accords with the European Union. Ukrainian police forces have met protesters with intimidation, and the escalating violence has resulted in the death of protesters. The use of excessive force to silence peaceful voices undermines the country's democratic future. The United States and Ukraine share an ideal of democracy in which citizens may live free of oppression and may elect their own leaders. When those leaders break their promises, it is even more important that citizens can freely express their discontent. We all must closely watch the negotiations between the current administration and the opposition. The United States should continue to stand with the Ukrainian people in their desire for economic growth and a free republic. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me begin by reminding the House that the gentleman that spoke before me on this side of the aisle, Mr. Sam Johnson from Texas, is a real American hero, and let us not forget that. This week is recognized as National School Choice Week, a week dedicated to bringing awareness to a very simple idea. Let's put parents in charge of their children's education. School choice means giving every child the opportunity to learn at the place that best meets their needs, not one that they are relegated to because of where they may live or what district they are assigned to. For decades now, our children learn, where our children learn has been decided by arbitrary government rules that can never understand the needs of each individual child or family. When kids fail to make the grade, the solution has been to throw more money and government regulation into the mix, but the end results cannot be clearer. This top-down government knows best system has failed to serve the very people it seeks to help, and support from parents and teachers for initiatives like Common Core continue to crumble. Be it a charter school, private school, homeschool, or local public school, the fact of the matter is parents know what works best for their child, not Washington. We owe it to our children to help them reach their full potential. I strongly believe that every child, regardless of background or school district, should have the opportunity to learn at the school that best meets their needs. Let's work together for a brighter future for our children. With that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Tonight, the President will address a key American principle, that everyone who works hard and plays by the rules deserves a chance at success. We certainly expect our kids to work hard in school and play by the rules in hopes that they will have strong futures that include a shot at the American dream. No matter what side of the aisle we're on, we can all agree that what we want is the best for our kids and, in some cases, our grandkids. But what kind of future are we giving them if they have to start behind kids in other countries where access to pre-K is widespread? Kids who are part of a quality pre-K program are more likely to graduate high school, to earn higher pay, and live more productive lives. In looking for common ground, we should learn from the recent spending deal, which showed bipartisan support for boosting early education. Let's not let tonight be a wasted opportunity to give our kids the strong start that they desire.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to call attention to recent remarks made by Department of Interior Secretary Sally Jewell regarding department requests submitted by the Natural Resource Committee. The Secretary gave excuse as to why it was inconvenient for her agency to comply with these requests and allow Congress to fulfill its duty in providing oversight to federal agencies. I serve on the Natural Resource Committee, and the document requests submitted concern federal regulations burdening this nation. The Secretary noted that going through these documents was a waste of time and money for her agency, and yet Congress is charged with keeping the agency, like the Department of Interior, accountable, because we are all in turn held accountable to the American taxpayer. We want answers to these regulation questions. A battle wages in our country between an increasing overbearing government and an increasingly burdened country of entrepreneurs. This struggle between regulation and innovation has tied the hands of many job creators. The federal government must stop putting people out of business through regulation and help get our country back to work. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Instead of talking about jobs or the economy or the unemployed who have lost their benefits because of our inaction, we're here talking about legislation that strips women of the fundamental right to make their own medical decisions. If H.R. 7 passes, millions of women who work for small businesses or who will be buying insurance on the exchanges will lose access to comprehensive health care. H.R. 7 is a radical bill that places restrictions on how women can spend their private dollars to purchase their private insurance. It would also make the Hyde Amendment permanent, which will cause detrimental and devastating effects to all women, especially low-income women. We must stand by women and vote no on H.R. 7. Thank you, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, no child in America should be forced to go to a school where they won't have a meaningful chance to learn. That's why school choice matters. School choice is about the freedom of parents to choose the best educational environment for their child to succeed. For some, that means open enrollment. For others, that means a public charter school. Some may prefer a magnet school or a private school or even a virtual school. Others may want to homeschool their children. Whatever the choice, National School Choice Week is about celebrating those choices and recognizing that applying market-based principles and technology to education can enhance student achievement and lead to better results. That's why I'm creating the Congressional School Choice Caucus, which will be dedicated to expanding educational freedom and promoting policies that increase high-quality education options for all children. I urge my colleagues to join us and empower parents with a choice so their kids have a chance for success. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I seek unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, this House will consider H.R. 7, which is an unprecedented assault on women's health care. This law would mean that millions of American women who would like to purchase their health insurance with their own money cannot purchase comprehensive health insurance
insurance which is their legal right, because this House of Representatives, and Madam Speaker, I would note a House of Representatives, particularly on the majority side, that is dominated by men, tell them they cannot do so. What's even more cynical, however, is that those who are promoting this and have said this know that it will not become law. It's a messaging bill. It's intended to send a message. To whom? And just what is that message? So while we're debating that, the House is not taking up unemployment insurance extension, which is not a messaging bill. It's heat in the home. It's keeping the lights on. It's paying the mortgage. It's putting food on the table for the children of the people in those homes. That's not a messaging bill. That's the work that we were sent here to do. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, request unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, when we needed bipartisan action to lower costs and improve health care, Congress passed the Affordable Care Act on a party line vote. Given the growing number of failures that have been revealed since the law's implementation began, it's time for Congress to work together to address the unworkable provisions for the good of the American people. Unfortunately, opposition to the ACA's flawed policy is moving beyond party labels. Last year, the Democratic-led Senate voted 79-20 to repeal the law's medical device tax. Since then, more and more members of Congress recognize there are bigger problems. Earlier in January, despite the Obama administration's vocal opposition to the efforts to boost consumer protections under the law, a veto-proof majority of Republicans and Democrats in the House voted to pass H.R. 3811, which would help secure personal information on the online exchanges. Madam Speaker, the American people deserve bipartisan solutions. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Ask for unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Here we go again. Instead of working with President Obama and Democrats to create jobs, economic opportunities, and fight poverty, extreme Tea Party Republicans are at it again, attacking women's health care and reproductive rights. Yes, it's another battle in the war on women. Instead of working together to extend unemployment benefits, here we are today debating another dangerous and divisive attempt to strip away the rights of women. Madam Speaker, Congress currently imposes unfair limitations on insurance coverage of abortion, and through the Hyde Amendment, that's a fact, even though I personally think we should get rid of all of these restrictions. Yet this bill, H.R. 7, creates an unprecedented interference in the lives of women and their families by restricting coverage for women's health in private insurance plans. It specifically attacks low-income women in the District of Columbia by permanently, mind you, permanently prohibiting the district from spending its purely local funds on abortions for low-income women. How many of you would want the federal government to restrict your funding in your local districts for any health care benefit for women? It codifies the harmful Helms Amendment. Enough is enough.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Speaker, I request that unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks and address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I would like to thank Mr. Smith and Lipinski for introducing H.R. 7, the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, a crucial bill that will help us save so many innocent lives. As pro-life members of Congress, we have a commitment to fight on behalf of those who have no voice and to take the necessary steps to advance legislation on the floor. The vast majority of Americans do not want their tax dollars to be used to pay for abortions. This bill would establish a permanent prohibition on taxpayer subsidies for abortion. For many years, the Hyde Amendment and other federal prohibitions on public funding for abortion have been enacted as appropriation riders, but they are not permanent. We need to get rid of this patchwork approach and enact H.R. 7 to ensure that federal funds are not used to pay for abortions. I will continue to work with like-minded members of Congress to promote H.R. 7 and all pro-life legislation because I understand that we have a responsibility to protect the innocent unborn. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Florida seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I found her. 40 years ago, I found my friend Flora bleeding near death. She was a victim of an illegal abortion, forced to turn to a back alley practitioner. She survived, but many like her did not. And today, my Republican colleagues are once again trying to take us back to those days with a new radical bill to deny our mothers, our daughters, our sisters the right to obtain a safe and legal abortion. I have a better idea. Madam Speaker, let's pass the Women's Health Protection Act that will allow all women, no matter where they live in this country, access to the tools and information that they need to make their own private health care decisions. Madam Speaker, we cannot, we will not go back. I yield the rest of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, Madam Speaker.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise to recognize Davie County Deputy Sheriff Christopher Fleming, injured last week while attempting to apprehend a violent suspected home invader. When deputies initially attempted to arrest the suspect, he fled to a nearby home and held 2 juveniles hostage at gunpoint for over an hour. After the hostages were released, Deputy Fleming, along with 3 other members of the Sheriff's Office, entered the home in order to apprehend the suspect. The suspect opened fire, hitting Deputy Fleming in the shoulder. Deputy Fleming's canine partner, Gorky, a Russian Shepherd and 5-year veteran of the force, was also shot in the incident and died last Thursday. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to report the suspect is in custody and Deputy Fleming is in good condition and expected to make a full recovery. This incident is a reminder of the risks taken by those who work to keep our communities safe. We must not take their sacrifices for granted. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New Hampshire seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today, the House will once again vote to restrict access to our reproductive health care. H.R. 7 would callously deny coverage to comprehensive health care for millions of women across America. When women are denied the freedom to make their own personal health care decisions, their economic opportunities are diminished as well. Instead of denying tax credits to women and small businesses seeking affordable health coverage, Congress needs to work together to empower women and increase opportunity. We should start by passing the Paycheck Fairness Act so every woman deserves and receives equal pay for equal work. This week marks the 5th anniversary of the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act being signed into law. Enactment of this law was a landmark achievement in the fight against gender discrimination, but there is so much work to do. Madam Speaker, Congress needs to get to work for women, not against women. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas seek recognition?
That's unanimous. Consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Tonight, President Obama will give another speech on the state of the American Union. And here are a few facts you likely won't hear him report to the American people. After 1,834 days as president, here are the results. 6.5 million more Americans in poverty. $6.6 trillion in massive new debt on our children and grandchildren. 13 million more Americans on food stamps. 5 million Americans and counting have lost their health insurance because of Obamacare, and 24.2 million Americans still looking for a full-time job in the Obama economy. Mr. President, I can only hope that you will recognize, that you will honestly admit, and tonight you will apologize for the damage your policies have inflicted on our nation, on the American people, and on the American dream. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, as the husband of an incredible woman who has guided and advised me for 46 years, and the father of 2 strong and accomplished young women, and the grandfather of 3 granddaughters, I stand with all women today. I stand in support of every woman's right to be able to choose what is best for her and her family. And I stand ready to protect and preserve the ability of every woman to make her own health care decisions with her doctor and without the interference of politicians in Washington. And I stand in opposition to H.R. 7, which would restrict the rights of women and their access to care. I urge my colleagues, everyone, to stand with me. And with that, I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Nevada seek recognition? Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Okay. Like those who have spoken so eloquently before me, I stand in strong opposition to H.R. 7. This legislation would drastically undermine a woman's constitutional right to choose and could effectively eliminate access to safe, legal reproductive care for low-income women across the country. It would also hurt our small businesses by raising taxes on those who offer their employees comprehensive health insurance. Republicans have repeatedly demonstrated a lack of understanding about basic women's health care, and this bill is just one more example of their continuing attack on women's rights. H.R. 7 is a step backward. It's nothing more than a distraction from the critical work we should be doing to pass immigration reform, strengthen our economy, and create jobs. We apparently have no time to vote on unemployment benefits for our neighbors, but plenty of time to take away a woman's right to choose. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this harmful and unconstitutional legislation, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Hawaii seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Many who were unemployed through no fault of their own remember December 28. That is when the unemployment insurance was not extended and Congress failed them. 1.3 million Americans were without any support as of that day. In 6 months, that number will grow to 1.9 million, 72,000 a week, or 1 person every 8 seconds. The real problem that we face is really the lack of job opportunity. Madam Speaker, we must bring the President's proposal for job creation to the floor. Remember, you have to be actively seeking work before you can receive unemployment insurance. See the problem? No efforts to create jobs and no bill there to protect those who are unemployed through no fault of their own. This is the highest long-term unemployment this country has seen since World War II. People need government to recognize this problem, and we have failed. We need to go back and know why unemployment insurance was created in the first place.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
We need to be that compassionate country again. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, for years the other side of the aisle has been trying to get between a woman and her doctor. Now they're trying to become between a woman and her insurance company. They want to open a new front on the war on women, and this one cruelly focuses on poor women. The law of the land is already clear. There is no federal funding for abortions. But with H.R. 7, which will be on the floor today, even private insurance plans could be restricted from covering abortion if you get a government subsidy. So if you're a low-income woman who needs help affording health care insurance, this bill is aimed squarely at you. Rather than tackling the real problems of economic growth and job creation, the other side of the aisle seems obsessed with curbing a woman's reproductive rights. They may not want to call this a war on women, but I would point out to my colleagues that women and only women are the casualties from this multifaceted assault on a woman's right to choose and reproductive rights.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, as a proud graduate of St. Simferosa Grammar School and St. Ignatius College Prep, and a strong supporter of Catholic education, I rise today to recognize the outstanding contributions that Catholic schools have made to our nation. Next week is the 40th Annual National Catholic Schools Week, and I have introduced H-Res 461, along with Mr. Smith of New Jersey, to honor the work done by parents, teachers, administrators, and parishioners for the more than 2 million children at over 6,600 Catholic schools in America. This year's theme, Catholic Schools, Communities of Faith, Knowledge, and Service, highlights the values that are a centerpiece of a Catholic school education. Later on this week, I'll be visiting several schools, including St. Rene in Chicago, St. Francis Xavier in LaGrange, St. Cyril and Methodius in Lamont, and St. Catherine's of Alexandria in Oak Lawn. Madam Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in honoring Catholic schools across our nation for the outstanding education they provide to so many Americans. And I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 465 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 81, House Resolution 465. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 7 to prohibit taxpayer-funded abortions. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. An amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 113-33 shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided among and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on the Judiciary, the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Ways and Means, and the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, and 2, 1 motion to recommit with or without instructions. Section 2. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider the conference report to accompany the bill H.R. 2642 to provide for the reform and continuation of agricultural and other programs of the Department of Agriculture through fiscal year 2018 and for other purposes. All points of order against the conference report and against its consideration are waived. The conference report shall be considered as read. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the conference report to its adoption without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate, and 2, 1 motion to recommit if applicable.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I raise a point of order against House Resolution 465 because the resolution violates Section 426A of the Congressional Budget Act. The resolution, in waiving all points of order against consideration of both H.R. 7, the anti-abortion bill, and the conference report on H.R. 2642, the Farm Bill, waives Sections 425 of the Congressional Budget Act, thereby causing a violation of Section 426A.
The gentleman from Massachusetts makes a point of order that the resolution violates Section 426A of the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. The gentleman has met the threshold burden under the rule, and the gentleman from Massachusetts and a member opposed each will control 10 minutes of debate on the question of consideration. Following debate, the Chair will put the question of consideration as a statutory means of disposing of the point of order. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, let me just say that it is outrageous, absolutely outrageous, that the Republican leadership has combined a major piece of anti-abortion legislation with the Farm Bill conference report into one single rule, restricting our ability to debate both of these important issues. There's an $8.6 billion cut to SNAP in this conference report, a cut that will only affect poor families, primarily the elderly and the disabled. Besides being cruel and heartless, this cut is also an unfunded mandate. If states, cities, or towns want to prevent hunger from getting worse, they will have to spend more money out of their own budgets. Now, I know my Republican friends are in a big hurry to go off to their issues retreat at some luxurious resort, but maybe we could have found another hour somewhere. Madam Speaker, I am honored to serve on the Agriculture Committee. I was honored to serve on the Conference Committee for the Farm Bill. I want to thank Chairman Lucas and Ranking Member Peterson and all of my colleagues for their hard work. I want a Farm Bill. I want to support the Farm Bill Conference. But from the beginning of this process, I made my position very clear that I will not vote for a Farm Bill that makes hunger worse in America. And this Farm Bill fails that basic test. If this bill passes, hundreds of thousands of vulnerable Americans will have less to eat, period. Now, some people will say, well, an $8 billion cut in SNAP is better than what the House Republicans wanted to do. That's a strange argument, Madam Speaker. It's like saying, thank goodness the burglar only took the silver because he could have taken the jewelry too. The fact of the matter is that any cut to SNAP will be piled on top of the cut that already went into effect last fall. And any cut to SNAP will result in more Americans going hungry, and any cut in SNAP will increase the financial burdens on state and local governments. There are those, Madam Speaker, who claim that the Heat and Eat program is some sort of a loophole. It isn't. It's a policy decision. It's a way for states to help some of our neighbors who are struggling through very difficult times. But even if this is a loophole, I ask my friends, of all the loopholes in federal law, of all the special interest giveaways, this is the one that you're going to target? This is the one that's in your crosshairs? A program that helps poor people get enough food to eat? My goodness. There are those who say that states and local governments or food banks or food pantries should pick up the slack. Have any of those people actually ever been to a food bank? Have they ever talked to a director of a food pantry? Because they are already at capacity, Madam Speaker. They can't meet the needs of the clients that they already have. My Republican friends have made their priorities very clear. They want to dismantle the social safety net. They want to get the federal government out of the business of helping people get enough to eat. But I also want to say that I am disappointed, Madam Speaker, in the people in my own party, here in the Congress and in the White House, who are going along with this. Tonight, the President of the United States will stand in this chamber and deliver the State of the Union. And when he talks about income inequality and helping people get into the middle class, all of us, Democrats, I hope some Republicans will stand up and cheer. But before that happens, we have an opportunity to put our votes where our cheers are. We have a chance to match our actions with our rhetoric. And the way to do that is to vote no on this conference report. So I say to my fellow Democrats, if cutting SNAP or other programs that help poor people is the price of admission to get anything done, any piece of major legislation passed, then we have strayed very, very far from our principles. Madam Speaker, again, I want to remind my colleagues that this is an unfunded mandate because there will be an increased burden on states and cities and towns to deal with this issue of hunger. And by the way, Madam Speaker, when people are hungry, when kids are hungry, they don't learn in school. When people are hungry, they end up going to the emergency room more often. When children are hungry, they end up, when they get a common cold, end up staying in the hospital for a period of time. That all costs us a great deal in terms of not only federal money, but state and local money. So in my opinion, this is an unfunded mandate, and this is a burden on the state. And Madam Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
The gentleman has 5.5 minutes remaining.
I yield the remaining time to the gentlelady from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Without objection.
I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts, and I thank him for his dedication and his passion on this issue that people in the United States of America should not go hungry. I rise in support of my colleague's point of order. This farm bill contains cuts to the food stamp program that will transfer the responsibility to states and cities to provide food to their families. And may I remind the members of this body that food stamps
our nation's most important anti-hunger program. This program was just cut 2 months ago in November. Because of the recent expiration of the Recovery Act provisions, food stamps have already been cut by $5 billion for next year, and $11 billion is the cut over 3 years. What does it mean? It means that a family of 4 lost $36 or 16 meals a month in support. That is already the difference between health and hunger. Now, the savage cuts in this farm bill would push Americans already living on the edge that much closer to the brink. Because of the $8.5 billion in cuts here, 850,000 households translates into 1.7 million Americans will lose an average of $90 a month or 66 more meals a month. Low-income seniors, working poor with families, individuals with disabilities, veterans would be particularly impacted by these cruel cuts. Perhaps some members have forgotten. That's because we eat well. That's because we eat well every day. But members have forgotten. Hunger is an abomination. We're talking about men and women experiencing real physical trauma. Children who cannot concentrate in school because all they can think about is food. Seniors are forced to decide in what has been a polar vortex, a virulent winter season, whether or not they will go hungry or be cold. And this is a problem all across the land. In my Connecticut district, nearly 1 in 7 households are not sure if they can afford enough food to feed their families. In Mississippi, 24.5% suffer food hardship. That's nearly 1 in 4 people. In West Virginia, Kentucky, 22%. Ohio, nearly 20%. California, just over 19%. The continued existence of hunger in America is a disgrace. And that's why in the past there's been a strong tradition of bipartisanship on fighting hunger and supporting nutrition. This farm bill flies in the face of that tradition. It takes food from the poor to pay for crop subsidies for the rich. Food stamps have one of the lowest error rates of any government program. It's a powerful positive impact on economic growth because they get resources into the hands of families who are going to spend them right away. The research shows that for every $5 of federal food stamp benefits, it generates nearly twice that in economic activity. Children's Health Watch. Those researchers found that after collecting 14 years of data, over 20,000 low-income families, that when families experience a loss or reduction in food stamp benefits, they are more likely to be food insecure, to be in poor health, and their children experience intensified developmental delays relative to their peers. Most importantly, food stamps are the right thing to do. It is the job of a good government to help vulnerable families to get back on their feet. And cutting food stamps will cause more hunger and health problems for Americans. In the words of Harry Truman, and I quote, "Nothing is more important in our national life than the welfare of our children, and the proper nourishment comes first in attaining this welfare." This bill flies in the face of that. It will cut $8.5 billion. You couple that with the cuts that have already been made in the economic recovery program, and that is almost $20 billion in a cut to the food stamp program. Some of my colleagues will say, well, we only did $8.5 billion in the farm bill. Let me just tell you, it may come from 2 sources, but the constituency is the same. Who are we as a nation? Where are our values? If we can provide crop subsidies for the richest farmers in this nation and tell them that they can make $900,000 a year before they will not be able to get a subsidy, or the 26 individuals who get a premium subsidy for crop insurance of at least $1 million a year. Those folks are eating. They're high on the hog. They got 3 squares a day. And when we provide $1.40, it is $1.40 per meal for food stamp beneficiaries. The people at the top end don't have an income cap. They don't have any asset
Time
test.
has expired.
And that is not true for food stamp recipients. We prescribe who can receive them. There are income limitations and asset limitations. Who are we as a
Time
nation?
has expired.
What are we about? Let's not take food out of the mouths of families and their children.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to claim time in opposition to the point of order and in favor of consideration of the resolution.
The gentlewoman is recognized for 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question before the House is, should the House now consider H.Res. 465? This point of order, Madam Speaker, is a dilatory tactic. I will remind the gentleman that each bill under this rule will be separately considered and debatable on the House floor. Madam Speaker, in order to allow the House to continue its scheduled business for the day, I urge members to vote yes on the question of consideration of the resolution and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman has the only remaining time. Do you yield back? Balance of your time.
The gentleman's time from Massachusetts has expired. Then I will yield back the balance of my time.
All time for debate has expired. The question is, will the House now consider the resolution? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The question of consideration is decided in the affirmative. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Madam Speaker,
The gentleman is recognized.
I raise a point of order against House Resolution 465 under Clause 9 of Rule 21 because the resolution contains a waiver of all points of order against H.R. 7, the abortion bill, and the conference report on H.R. 2642, the farm bill.
The gentleman from Massachusetts makes a point of order that the resolution violates 9C of Rule 21. Under Clause 9C of Rule 21, the gentleman from Massachusetts and the gentlewoman from North Carolina each will control 10 minutes of debate on the question of consideration. Following that debate, the chair will put the question of consideration as follows. Will the House now consider the resolution? The chair recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the conference report on the farm bill was made public at around 7:30 last night. With nearly 1,000 pages dumped on us at the last minute, we know that no one has had a chance to read the entire thing. I'm a conferee, and even I had an extra few hours to try to digest this monstrosity of a bill. But who knows what's in this bill? And that's why I'm raising this earmarks point of order, because as I said earlier, Madam Speaker, one of the things that is most troubling to me and a number of my colleagues, again, is this attack on poor people. Is this attack on SNAP, a program that does nothing more than provide food to people. And, Madam Speaker, I want to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a letter that was addressed to Congress from the mayors of Baton Rouge, Boston, Dallas, District of Columbia, Gary, Hartford, Ithaca, Los Angeles, Madison, Memphis, New York, Providence, Raleigh, Sacramento, Salt Lake City, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle, and Tucson, urging us in both the House and the Senate to reject these SNAP cuts. These mayors have made it very clear that it would have an adverse impact on the people that they represent. They have stressed in this letter the importance of SNAP to help people to be able to put food on the table for their children. I also want to Madam Speaker, reference a statement from the Food Research and Action Center, otherwise known as FRAC. And they are urging us to vote against this conference committee report if these SNAP cuts remain in the bill. They have said that SNAP is essential to the nutrition and the health and the well-being of 47 million Americans each month. But every participant suffered a significant cut in benefits beginning last November 1st. As the gentlelady from Connecticut made mention of, on November 1st, an $11 billion cut in SNAP went into effect. All 47 million beneficiaries received a cut. Food prices didn't go down, but their benefit went down. And now we're going to pile on. And there are some who say that, well, it doesn't affect all 47 million. It's only going to be about 1 million or so people that will be adversely impacted. But those people that will be adversely impacted stand a great deal to lose. The November 1st cut for the average family of 3 resulted in a $30 a month benefit cut. You add this on top of it, it's another $80 to $90. So that family of 3 will receive about $120 to $130 less per month. What are they going to do? Even before these cuts went into effect, they were going to food banks. They were going to charities looking for help because their benefit was so meager to begin with. What are they supposed to do? I think in this House of Representatives, I don't care what your political party or ideology is, it should never, ever, ever, ever be acceptable that anybody in this country, the United States of America, the richest country in the history of the world, should go hungry. And the fact that we are moving forward with the Farm Bill, a deal that contains this $8.6 billion in cuts, I think is outrageous. I'm all for a deal. I want a Farm Bill. I'm willing to swallow a lot of things in this bill that I don't like. But the price of doing that should not be to increase hunger and poverty in this country. And that's what this bill does. You know, we talk about deals. Behind these deals are real people. I mean, they're our neighbors. They're in every community. There's not a congressional district in our country that is hunger-free. These people are everywhere. We have an obligation to not turn our backs on them. And SNAP is one of the most efficiently run federal programs, with one of the lowest error rates. This is important. SNAP in and of itself is not going to solve the problem of hunger or poverty. But the bottom line is, by cutting it the way we're doing, we're making things worse for people. I stood on the floor today and I read, I read the descriptions of individuals in Massachusetts who, if this Farm Bill passes, will see a significant cut in their benefit. And their question to me is, what do I do? Where do I go? Tell me how to put food on the table for my kids. Tell me how I'm going to survive. You know, we should not be making the lives of people who are suffering more miserable. That's not our job. I want to ask unanimous consent to insert the entire Food Research and Action Center statement into the record, Madam Speaker.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, in Massachusetts alone, there will be 125,000 SNAP households that could suffer up to a $70 to $80 a month cut in SNAP benefit if this Farm Bill goes through as it is. There is no reason in the world that we should be cutting this program. This is not an ATM machine to pay for big farm subsidies. This is not an ATM machine to make up for the fraud and the waste and the abuse in the crop insurance program. And again, I will repeat to my colleagues, tonight we're going to hear the President talk about income inequality. And my criticism here, it is a bipartisan criticism. I'm critical of the Republicans for the cruel cuts that were proposed in the original Farm Bill, up to $40 billion, and I'm frustrated that there are people in my own party, including in this White House, who don't believe this is worth the fight. Well, this is worth the fight. I mean, if this is not worth the fight, I don't know what the hell we're here for. If making sure that people in this country don't go hungry is not a priority, then I don't know what we're doing here. And we can explain this away, we can rationalize it and justify it, and I've heard all the talking points. My favorite is that nobody will actually lose their benefit. What that neglects to tell you is that their benefit will be cut down to almost nothing. Yes, they'll still get a little benefit, but it might be $15 a month instead of $115 a month. I mean, is that the best we can do? I mean, on both sides of the aisle. This never used to be a partisan issue. This never used to be a polarizing issue. And now all of a sudden it has become one. I mean, again, I plead with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Let's come together and get a Farm Bill done, but not at this price. Not at this price. And I urge the White House to stand up and fight alongside of us on this. They should be taking a greater leadership role in this. It's not enough, just enough to talk about income inequality. You've got to fight for it, too. Madam Speaker, I would like to yield my remaining time to the gentlelady from Connecticut. How much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman has 3 minutes.
I yield her the additional remaining 3 minutes.
Without objection.
Proud once again to join my colleague, and I too want a farm bill. As a matter of fact, I had the honor of helping to negotiate the 2008 Farm Bill, the nutrition portion of it, which we maintained that historic coalition between the safety net for agriculture and the safety net for nutrition. I think it's almost unbelievable that we got a 1,000-page bill. I just want to say to the American public here that you should ask members of Congress as whether or not they read the bill. We went over and over and over this with regard to the health care bill. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle kept asking us whether or not we read the bill. No one has really read this bill. There were 4 people who negotiated this work. We could well be with significant earmarks in this effort. Let me point out the reverse Robin Hood legislation here. Steals food from the poor to help pay for handouts to wealthy agribusiness. Let me just give you a couple of examples. In violation of the congressional rule that provisions passed by both bodies should not be changed, the conference, 4 people, more than doubled the annual primary payments from $50,000 to $125,000, $250,000 a couple. They reopened the loophole that was closed in the House and in the Senate that allows wealthy farmers to collect far more than the nominal payment limit. $50,000, they raised it to $125,000 for an individual, to a couple $250,000. House and Senate, bipartisan basis, closed the loophole. Allows payments to be collected by multiple people on the farm. What we have today is 8 people can collect a $125,000 payment, leading to $1 million subsidy for a farm. 7 of those 8 people never have to put their foot on the farm. It's called padding the payroll. Quote, unquote, farmers, they don't have to undergo any income means testing to receive a subsidy. Durbin Coburn in the United States Senate. Let's reduce the level of federal premium support for crop insurance participants with an adjusted gross income of $750,000. The conference report, 4 people determined that they would make that cap at $900,000. Again, the wealthiest people in the nation. Let me just tell you about crop insurance. I don't know that the American public knows that the federal government, you, Mr. and Mrs. Taxpayer, you pick up 60% of the cost of that crop insurance. That doesn't include administrative fees. There are 26 individuals today who get at least $1 million in a premium subsidy. We can't find out who they are. They could very well be members of Congress because they are protected. 26 individuals. We have almost 50 million people who are on the food stamp program, 16 million of whom are children. And we want to tell them that, and there is no fraud and abuse in this program the way there is in a crop insurance program. And yet we want to take food out of the mouths of families and children in this nation. It's the wrong thing to do. This bill should be rejected.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to claim time in opposition to the point of order and in favor of consideration of the resolution.
The gentlelady is recognized.
The question before the House